Hello, this is Diana Attorney, and I look forward to reviewing with you the timeline and some of the other key elements, such as family dynamics, to keep everything moving forward as you hope. So, to get started, let's look briefly at that timeline. I have a graphic that, while this is not an exacting science, it gives you a good idea, and this tends to be what I see happen pretty often. In the first year, a lot of people have lots of questions. They're doing research, evaluating, and exploring what they might want or what they need. Then in the second year, people turn around and gather more information because they're going to start communicating. And finally, in year three, a transition team is formed. By the fourth year, you're implementing. And in year five, and after that, you're making changes as appropriate. Every plan is unique, but this just gives you some idea of what is fairly common in the process. I urge you to make lists, ask questions, and do the research. So many questions and ideas are going to come to you at times that maybe aren't convenient. You're under the tractor, you're out in the field plowing, you're at a supplier's, wherever you might be. Write those questions down. Have a pencil and paper. Those nice pocket-sized ones are great to have around with you, that you can quickly write down your questions or your to-dos. So you stay on target and record the answers. And don't just toss these after you get the answer and go, oh, that's the answer. You might forget down the road. So keep that paper, and I urge you to store it, put date and time and who you talked to when you did that. Don't be shy. Ask questions and listen. There's a lot of information that people are telling you, and it will be helpful in your transition. You'll also find that research can be incorporated into your daily routine. You might be at a supplier's, at the bank, the feed store, or just talking across the fence to neighbors. All this is great time to gather some of the information and run by some of your ideas if you're thinking about it. So, great time to just make it part of your day. You're going to need a lot of important information in this, and it needs to be very accurate. So it's going to include both personal and business, and be sure to keep it separate as such. And you're going to document any assets that you have, because that's what's transfers is assets. You're going to want to copy and collect information by topic, and whether that's an electronic copy or printed, you'll find out from your core team and your heirs what is most helpful, what is recommended. But in any event, secure it. Had a very nice lady that I worked with, a longtime client who began moving through a transition and was so excited, called me up and said, oh, I have everything in the file cabinet. It's out front. And now I can answer and move forward with the next step on my team. I happened to be over at her house just a few days later, and I found, yeah, it was out front, right on her front porch. It was not secured. And that was every piece of information that anyone could need to do lots of things that would be bad. So we moved that, got it stored in a secure place. But you want to think about where you keep things, whether electronic with security passwords, or if you're going to keep physical copies, it needs to be where only the people that need it have access to it. And make sure it's updated, because we know things change, whether it's yearly or maybe you want to do it more often, but at the very least, yearly. And if everyone knows where it is, that's great. And just a little caveat, when my mother had a stroke, well, my brother and I always knew where things were stored. They made it very clear to us. Mom had the key with her at all times on this brightly colored ring in her pocket. When she had her stroke, all I know is it went with her and it was in her pocket, according to the aides, but it was nowhere to be found when we talked to the ambulance, the hospital, and every step along the way we went back for. It was gone. The pants were never found, nothing. And so that great fire safe, well, we couldn't access it until we were able to get it drilled. So you can avoid some of these things by thinking a little further out and what might not work despite our best efforts. You're also going to want to have information on all the key team members, and that's available, and people can get to it. Also, information needs to be legible. Sometimes documents get wet. We have different weather. Maybe that got wet due to a storm or something happened, fire, and they were putting out the fire and all these documents in this fire safe. Well, they were dry, but humidity took over. And when you finally opened it up, they were not legible. So you need to make sure and look at it from time to time to make sure you have what you think you have. And once you control who has access to that information, then the people who need it have it when the time does come. Your personal and business information, there'll be lots of account IDs, which may change over time as your suppliers and vendors change hands or are bought by others. Sometimes they add a digit or get a whole new account number. And one of the things you could find is that you have an account that was owned by a previous owner of the property, perhaps a grandfather or your dad. You've just never changed it over. It was listed as so-and-so farms and never changed. So a lot of information comes up when you start asking. Addresses may change, whether they have physical addresses or PO boxes. And phone numbers change, as well as emails and key contacts. Here's just a little diagram, not of all the information, but some. And the goal of this is to get you thinking about this. And we'll go through the document I prepared to kind of help you in greater detail, but this is just an overview. Your transition team, as they work with you have to be prepared to share information. And sometimes it feels a little uncomfortable because it is private information and confidential. But you covered that base by working upfront to ensure the people you are going to have as part of your transition team are people you trust. But they'll know your ideas, questions, and concerns. And I make notes as I talk to people, date, time, and when we talked, how we talked. And if there was a physical document that accompanied that, I would make sure it also accompanied my notes. Gather copies of documents. Make sure that those are very clear and you have them. And when you communicate with specifics, not just, well, the business banking account. Well, which one is the business banking account? You have several. So you'll have to be more detailed in what you have to say. And please utilize the help of your transition team. Only you get to decide whether how much or how little you use them. But while you think you may be saving money by doing more of the work yourself, you may find not only does it cause delays, but in some cases keeps your plan from ever getting done, or it could result in mistakes if you don't ask them to pitch in and help you a bit more. I usually find it's not a lot more to have them help you. Please remember that words can hurt. They can also heal. And take the high road. Plan on prioritizing your steps in this plan. That'll help outline what I need to do next, because you can't do it all at once. I always think of the pies that my grandma made. They were amazing. And I never felt very good if I had more than a piece or so. Although I wanted more, I didn't feel great. So this plan, you can only do so much along. So having a piece of pie along isn't a bad idea. And work on your business plan while you're at it. Patience is always a good idea, and be sure to clarify as you're going through things. This is a concern versus this is a very, very serious concern. That tells me something different when I'm working with someone, the emphasis that you put on things. And prepare to make some changes as the plan goes in place. Perhaps things have changed for people, and if that is the case, it needs to be reflected. I had an heir who did not tell the family that he had inherited a lot of money from his wife's family. And now he was in a situation that he really couldn't afford tax-wise any more assets. And so he didn't want his name on anything in a transition. He was willing to help out on the farm, but he didn't want his name on any titles. And that information finally came out when he did what we had recommended, which was a family meeting continue and meetings of the core team. We also need to allow sometimes for one-on-one meetings where you can have honest conversations or kind of check in on things a little bit that you didn't quite understand why someone responded in a particular way. Give people a way to communicate with you, and also they want to respect you and make that possible for them as well. You can make changes. Remember, as this process, you can make changes as you go. And don't miss out by not reviewing your plan every couple of years. If you do not review it, you miss the opportunity of making a change that you know you needed to make. A lot of us have great intentions and things get in the way and we forget. Just make it a point. In fact, having a standing meeting with your attorney and your accountant at the very least each year is highly recommended. And if you can arrange to also have those folks meet with your key heirs, is a really good idea so they know what to expect, and perhaps your power of attorney if they don't happen to be your heirs. It can keep everybody in the loop and in the know on what you have chosen to do. Here are some contacts at our Soil and Water Conservation District, and I know they would be happy to help you in the process and some of the resources that they have. And finally, let's talk about those two documents that in a few minutes we'll review. The first one is going to be a family tree. And I know a lot of you think about the historical side of your farm or ranch or forestry enterprise. Well, that's only part of it. And when we get to that exercise, you'll see more. So stay tuned and we'll look at that. And then next will be the 100 list. This is probably one of the most popular documents I produce, and people really enjoy it and it helps them gather information. So I've sure enjoyed having time with you today, and I look forward to working with you on the next section. See you in just a few minutes.